Hey guys, tonight we begin with binding contracts, burning incense and bridal tears. Forget the Pinterest boards and fairy tale ceremonies TikTok sold you. We're diving into the fascinating world of ancient Chinese weddings, where love was optional, dowries were crucial, and your wedding day was probably the first time you ever saw your spouse's face. So before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. And let me know in the comments where you're tuning in from and what time it is for you. It's always fascinating to see who's joining us from around the world. Now dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. So you're a young person in ancient China, and you've just realised something horrifying. You have absolutely no say in who you're going to marry. Congratulations. Welcome to a world where romantic love is about as relevant to marriage as your personal preferences are to tax collection. Your parents, with the help of a professional matchmaker, are about to choose your life partner based on criteria that would make a modern dating app seem emotionally enlightened. The matchmaker arrives at your family compound, and you can smell her before you see her. She's carrying the scent of 100 different households, mixed with the particular perfume that comes from someone who spends their days negotiating the intimate details of strangers' lives. She knows everyone's secrets, everyone's flaws, and everyone's financial situation, down to the last copper coin. Think of her as a combination wedding planner, private investigator, and social media algorithm. Except she's a middle-aged woman with sharper eyes and sharper opinions about your marriage prospects. You're not allowed to participate in these discussions, of course. Why would you be? You're only the person who's going to spend the rest of your life with the chosen individual. Instead, you sit in another room, perhaps catching fragments of conversation through the paper-thin walls, hearing your future being decided by people who care more about maintaining social harmony than your personal happiness. The matchmaker is discussing your 8 characters, the year, month, day and hour of your birth, which will be compared to potential matches to ensure cosmic compatibility. It's like ancient Chinese astrology, but with higher stakes and less wiggle room for interpretation. The conversation flows around practical matters that would make modern romantics weep. How much land does the family own? What's their social status? Are there any hereditary diseases? Any history of gambling, alcoholism, or political trouble? Your future spouse's personality, interests, or physical appearance are distant secondary concerns, mentioned only in passing if at all. The matchmaker might note that a potential bride is virtuous and skilled in needlework, or that a groom is scholarly and dutiful to his parents, but these are just polite ways of saying they're unlikely to cause dramatic problems. The negotiations can go on for months. Your parents are essentially engaged in a complex form of social chess, where every move has to be calculated not just for your benefit, but for the entire extended family's reputation and future prospects. They're considering how this marriage will affect your siblings' marriage prospects, your family's business relationships, and their own social standing in the community. It's like a merger between 2 small corporations, except the paperwork is written in red ink and involves a lot more incense. Meanwhile, you're living in a state of suspended animation, knowing that your entire future is being decided but having no control over the outcome. If you're a woman, you might be learning additional domestic skills, practicing your needlework, or studying poetry so you can be properly accomplished for your future household. If you're a man, you might be focused on your studies, or learning your father's trade, preparing to take on the responsibilities of supporting a family. But in both cases, you're essentially preparing for a life with a complete stranger. The social pressure is immense. Everyone in your community knows that marriage negotiations are underway, and they're all watching to see how well your family can do in the marriage market. A good match brings honour to the entire family line. A poor match, or worse, no match at all, brings shame that can last for generations. Your unmarried status becomes a reflection of your family's worth in the community's eyes. The matchmaker finally returns with news. She's found a suitable match, and the preliminary negotiations have been successful. You feel a mixture of relief and terror. Relief because the uncertainty is ending. Terror because the uncertainty is ending. You're about to meet your future spouse for the first time, but even this meeting is carefully orchestrated and chaperoned. Don't expect a casual coffee date or a walk in the park. This is a formal interview disguised as a social visit, where every word and gesture will be analysed for compatibility and proper behaviour. The meeting takes place in your family's main hall, with both sets of parents present, along with various relatives and the matchmaker herself. The atmosphere is so formal, you can practically hear the social expectations crackling in the air. You and your potential spouse sit at a careful distance from each other, making polite conversation about safe topics like the weather, literature, or family history. You're both trying to make a good impression, while simultaneously trying to figure out if you can tolerate spending the rest of your lives together. This is your chance to assess your future partner, but you have to do it subtly. You're looking for signs of intelligence, kindness, and basic compatibility, but you're also acutely aware that everyone in the room is watching your reactions. Show too much interest and you might seem improper. Show too little and you might seem ungrateful or difficult. It's like a job interview where the position is spouse, and the benefits package includes lifelong commitment with no possibility of resignation. The conversation is stilted and artificial, full of the kind of polite nothings that reveal nothing about personality or compatibility. You might discuss classical poetry, current events, or family traditions, but you're both essentially performing roles, rather than having a genuine conversation. Every response is calculated to demonstrate proper education, moral character, and social awareness. It's exhausting, and you're not even married yet. After what feels like an eternity of polite conversation, the meeting ends. You bow formally to each other and to the assembled families, and then you're separated again, while the adults discuss the details. You've just met the person you're expected to spend the rest of your life with, and you know almost nothing about them beyond their ability to make appropriate small talk in a high-pressure social situation. The decision is made quickly after the meeting. If both families are satisfied with the match, the negotiations move forward to the formal engagement process. If not, it's back to the drawing board with the matchmaker, and the whole process begins again. But assuming everything goes well, you're now officially engaged to someone you've met exactly once, in a room full of relatives for approximately 2 hours. Congratulations! You've just experienced ancient Chinese speed dating, where the speed refers to how quickly your entire future can be decided by people who aren't you. Now comes the really fun part, preparing for a wedding that will be more about social display than personal celebration, involving rituals that date back thousands of years and costs that might bankrupt your family. But don't worry, at least you'll have several months to get used to the idea of marrying a complete stranger. Now that you've been successfully matched like a pair of socially appropriate bookends, it's time for the betrothal ceremony, where your engagement becomes as legally binding as a business contract, and approximately as romantic as a tax assessment. This isn't a simple exchange of rings or a romantic proposal. This is a complex ritual that involves your extended families, significant financial negotiations, and enough ceremonial procedures to make a modern wedding planner weep with envy. The ceremony begins with the formal presentation of the betrothal gifts, which sounds sweet until you realise that you're essentially watching your future in-laws calculate your exact monetary value. The groom's family arrives at your family compound carrying an elaborate procession of gifts that have been carefully chosen to demonstrate their wealth, social status, and serious commitment to the marriage. These aren't romantic tokens of affection. They're a form of currency that establishes the terms of the marriage contract. The gifts are carried in on special red lacquered trays, covered with red silk cloths, and presented with the kind of ceremony usually reserved for religious offerings. There are bolts of silk in auspicious colours, jewellery that's been in the groom's family for generations, tea of the finest quality, wine that's been aged longer than you've been alive, and various foods that symbolise fertility and prosperity. Each gift has a specific meaning, and the quantity and quality of each item sends a clear message about how much this marriage is worth to the groom's family. Your family receives these gifts with elaborate courtesy, examining each item carefully while maintaining an expression of gracious acceptance. But underneath the polite smiles, there's a complex calculation happening. Are these gifts sufficient to demonstrate proper respect for their daughter? Do they reflect the social status that was agreed upon during the matchmaking negotiations? If the gifts are too modest, it's an insult that could call off the entire engagement. If they're too lavish, it might create uncomfortable obligations for future gift exchanges. The most important item in the entire gift presentation is the betrothal contract itself, written on fine paper in formal calligraphy that took a professional scribe hours to complete. This document outlines the terms of the marriage agreement with the kind of legal precision that would make a modern divorce lawyer proud. It specifies the dowry that your family will provide, the exact date of the wedding ceremony, the living arrangements after marriage, and the financial responsibilities of both families. Reading through this contract, if you are allowed to, which you're not, you would discover that your marriage is less about love and more about the merger of two economic units. The contract specifies what happens if either party dies before the wedding, what constitutes grounds for calling off the engagement, and how property will be divided in various scenarios. It's romance as understood by accountants and lawyers, which is to say not romantic at all. The ceremony continues with the formal acceptance of the gifts and the presentation of return gifts from your family to the groom's family. These are typically smaller but equally symbolic items that demonstrate your family's appreciation and their own social standing. The exchange of gifts is accompanied by elaborate bows, formal speeches, and the kind of ritualistic courtesy that turns a simple transaction into an hours-long ceremony. Everyone present knows that they're participating in a legal proceeding disguised as a social event. The witnesses aren't just there to celebrate, they're there to ensure that both families fulfill their obligations according to the terms being established. If anyone tries to back out of the agreement later, these witnesses will be called upon to testify about what was promised and what was delivered. The matchmaker plays a crucial role in this ceremony, acting as both translator and referee. She ensures that all the proper protocols are followed, that the gifts are appropriate, and that both families understand exactly what they are agreeing to. Her presence legitimizes the entire proceeding and provides a buffer if any disputes arise about the terms of the engagement. As the ceremony concludes, you realize that you're no longer just yourself. You're now a contracted bride or groom, legally bound to a specific person for a marriage that will take place on a specific date. The engagement isn't something that can be easily broken without serious social and financial consequences. You've essentially been sold, if you're the bride, or have purchased, if you're the groom, a life partner through a complex system of family negotiations and ritual exchanges. The weight of this realization is overwhelming. You're sitting in a room full of people celebrating your engagement to someone you barely know, listening to formal speeches about harmony and prosperity, while internally processing the fact that your autonomy just ended. Everyone is smiling and congratulating your families on the excellent match, but you're thinking about the fact that you're now legally obligated to marry a stranger in a few months. The The ceremony ends with a formal meal where both families dine together to celebrate the successful completion of the betrothal process. The conversation is carefully cheerful, focusing on auspicious topics like the coming wedding, the favourable omens that brought the families together, and the bright future that awaits the new couple. Nobody mentions the pressure, the financial stress, or the fundamental uncertainty of arranged marriage. You sit at this celebratory meal, picking at food that tastes like cardboard because your stomach is tied in knots, listening to your future in-laws discuss wedding preparations with your parents as if you're not even there. The adults are excited about the upcoming ceremony, the social event it will provide, and the alliance it will create between the families. You're thinking about the fact that you just legally committed to spending the rest of your life with someone whose favourite colour you don't even know. As the evening concludes and the groom's family prepares to leave, you exchange formal farewells with your future spouse. You bow to each other with the appropriate degree of respect, perhaps exchange a few polite words about looking forward to the wedding, and then they're gone. You won't see them again until the wedding day, which suddenly seems both impossibly far away and terrifyingly close. Congratulations! You're now officially engaged in the most legally binding, financially complex, and emotionally distant way possible. The betrothal ceremony has transformed you from a single person with theoretical future options into a contracted spouse with specific legal obligations. Now comes the really fun part. Months of wedding preparation involving rituals that are older than your ancestors, costs that will strain your family's resources, and the gradual realization that your wedding day will be more about social performance than personal celebration. So you've survived the betrothal ceremony, and now your families are engaged in what can only be described as the most polite form of financial warfare ever invented: dowry negotiations. If you thought the matchmaking process was complex, prepare yourself for a level of economic calculation that would make a modern accountant weep with admiration. You're about to discover that your marriage isn't just about joining two people together. It's about transferring wealth, establishing social status, and creating financial obligations that will affect your families for generations. The dowry negotiations begin with both families sitting down to discuss what can only be described as your price tag. If you're the bride, your family is essentially calculating how much they need to pay to secure your future husband's family's acceptance of you into their household. If you're the groom, your family is determining how much compensation they expect to receive for taking on the financial responsibility of supporting a new family member. It's romance as understood by merchants and bankers, which is to say, not remotely romantic. Your father sits across from your future father-in-law, and between them lie scrolls of paper covered with calculations, lists, and the kind of detailed financial planning that usually accompanies major business transactions. They're discussing silk, jewellery, furniture, livestock, land, and cash with the intensity of people negotiating a trade agreement. Because that's essentially what this is, a trade agreement where you happen to be the primary commodity being exchanged. The dowry isn't just money or goods, it's a complex package of immediate payments, future obligations, and social guarantees. Your family needs to provide enough wealth to demonstrate your value and ensure your security in your new household, but not so much that it bankrupts them or creates unrealistic expectations for your siblings' future marriages. It's like trying to bid on an auction item when you don't know the other bidder's limits, and the consequence of underbidding is your daughter's lifelong unhappiness. The negotiations involve items that range from the practical to the purely symbolic. There are bolts of silk for clothing, jewellery for special occasions, furniture for your new living quarters, and household items for daily use. But there are also more abstract contributions like payments for wedding expenses, guarantees of financial support during difficult times, and promises of assistance with future business ventures. Each item has to be valued, compared to social expectations and balanced against the family's actual resources. Your mother participates in these discussions with the kind of focused intensity usually reserved for military strategists. She's calculating not just the immediate costs, but the long-term implications of each decision. If they provide too lavish a dowry, it might create expectations that your siblings can't meet. If they provide too modest a dowry, it might suggest that your family doesn't value the marriage or respect the groom's family appropriately. Every choice has social consequences that extend far beyond the immediate transaction. The most complex part of the dowry negotiations involves the items that aren't easily quantified. How much is your education worth? Your needlework skills? Your ability to manage a household? Your potential for producing male heirs? These factors all influence the dowry requirements, but they're discussed in euphemistic terms that disguise the essentially commercial nature of the transaction. Your future mother-in-law might praise your refined accomplishments while mentally calculating how much those accomplishments reduce the cash payment she expects. The jewellery component of the dowry deserves special mention because it's simultaneously the most valuable and the most complicated part of the negotiations. The jewellery isn't just decoration, it's a form of insurance, a status symbol, and the emergency fund all rolled into one. If your future household faces financial difficulties, your jewellery might be sold to cover expenses. If you need to demonstrate your family's wealth at social events, your jewellery will be the proof. If you're ever widowed, your jewellery might be your only source of independent income. But jewellery also comes with obligations. Each piece has to be appropriate for your future social position, which means it can't be too modest, suggesting your family doesn't value the marriage, or too elaborate, suggesting pretensions above your station. The jewellery has to be crafted by reputable artisans, using materials that will hold their value over time, and designed in styles that won't become embarrassingly outdated. It's like building an investment portfolio, except the investments are earrings and necklaces that you'll be expected to wear while managing a household. The furniture and household goods portion of the dowry involves even more complex calculations. Your family needs to provide enough furniture to establish your living quarters in your new home. But the furniture has to be appropriate for your future status within the household. Too elaborate, and you might be seen as trying to outshine your mother-in-law. Too simple, and you might be seen as bringing shame to the family. The furniture also has to be practical enough for daily use, beautiful enough to reflect well on your family, and durable enough to last for decades. The livestock component of the dowry, if your family is prosperous enough to include livestock, involves negotiations that would make a modern commodities trader proud. How many chickens constitute appropriate dowry? What's the going rate for a pig in terms of marriage value? If your family provides a cow, does that reduce the cash payment by a corresponding amount? These animals aren't just gifts, they're investments in your future household's food security and economic stability. The land component of the dowry, if your family owns land, involves the most complex negotiations of all. Land isn't just valuable, it's a source of ongoing income, a symbol of social status, and a legacy that affects multiple generations. If your family provides land as part of your dowry, they're essentially giving you a degree of financial independence that was rare for women in ancient China. But they're also reducing the inheritance that will be available for your siblings, which creates family dynamics that can last for decades. Throughout these negotiations, you're sitting in another room, perhaps learning about the discussions second-hand through overheard conversations or carefully neutral updates from your mother. You're learning that your marriage isn't just about your future happiness, it's about economic calculations that affect your entire extended family. Your siblings' marriage prospects, your parents' retirement security, and your family's social standing all depend on the outcome of these negotiations. The psychological pressure of the dowry negotiations is immense. Your family is essentially betting their financial future on your marriage, and everyone knows it. If the marriage fails, if your spouse's family doesn't treat you well, or if circumstances change dramatically, the dowry represents a massive financial loss with no hope of recovery. It's like investing your life savings in a single stock, except the stock is your daughter's marital happiness and the market's completely unpredictable. The negotiations can take weeks or even months, with offers, counter-offers, and careful diplomatic discussions about every component of the dowry. Your family might consult with other families about current dowry standards, research the market value of various goods, and calculate the long-term financial implications of each decision. It's like planning a major business expansion, except the business is your future household, and the success metrics are completely subjective. Finally, after what feels like an eternity of financial calculations and diplomatic negotiations, the dowry agreement is reached. The final package represents a compromise between your family's resources, your future in-laws' expectations, and the social standards of your community. It's a financial commitment that will affect your family for years to come, all in service of a marriage to someone you've met exactly once. Congratulations! Your marriage has now been assigned a specific monetary value, calculated down to the last piece of jewellery and bolt of silk. You've discovered that your worth as a spouse can be quantified in terms of livestock, furniture, and cash payments, and that your family's financial future depends on the success of your marriage to a stranger. Now comes the really exciting part. Months of preparation for a wedding ceremony that will cost almost as much as your dowry and involve rituals that are older than written history. Now that your families have successfully negotiated your price and signed the contracts, it's time for the pre-wedding preparations, which are essentially several months of increasingly frantic activity designed to ensure that your wedding day goes perfectly according to traditions that were ancient when your great-great-grandmother was born. You're about to discover that planning an ancient Chinese wedding makes modern wedding planning look like a casual dinner party involving levels of detail, superstition, and social pressure that would make a modern bride's Pinterest board seem quaint. The first major task is selecting the wedding date, which isn't as simple as checking your calendar and picking a nice day. Oh no, that would be far too straightforward. Instead, your families consult with fortune tellers, astrologers, and calendar specialists who analyse the cosmic significance of various dates, compare them with your birth charts, and calculate the astrological compatibility of potential wedding days. It's like modern wedding planning, except instead of worrying about venue availability, you're worrying about whether the moon will be in the right position to ensure marital happiness. The fortune teller arrives at your family compound carrying scrolls, charts, and the kind of serious expression that suggests your wedding date will determine the fate of your unborn children. She spreads out complex calendars marked with auspicious and inauspicious dates, muttering calculations that involve elements, animals, and celestial movements. You learn that certain days are excellent for weddings, but terrible for travel, while others are perfect for business ventures, but disastrous for marriage. It's like trying to plan a party when every possible date has cosmic implications. After days of consultation and calculation, a date is selected that balances astrological favourability with practical considerations like weather, harvest schedules, and family obligations. The chosen date is then announced to your extended family and social circle, making it official and adding the pressure of social expectations to the cosmic pressure already surrounding your wedding. Everyone now knows exactly when you'll be getting married, and they're all expecting an event that lives up to the months of preparation. The next major task is preparing your wedding attire, which involves more complexity than a modern fashion show. Your wedding outfit isn't just clothing, it's a symbolic representation of your family status, your personal virtue, and your readiness to assume your new role as a married person. The fabric, colours, embroidery, and accessories all have specific meanings that communicate important information to everyone who sees you on your wedding day. The fabric selection alone requires multiple consultations with silk merchants, dye specialists, and embroidery experts. The quality of the silk reflects your family's wealth and their respect for the marriage. The colours have to be auspicious for your birth year and compatible with your future spouse's elemental associations. The embroidery patterns need to include symbols for fertility, prosperity, and marital happiness, all executed with the kind of precision that takes master craftsmen weeks to complete. Your mother oversees the creation of your wedding outfit with the intensity of a military commander planning a crucial battle. She's coordinating with seamstresses, embroiderers, and jewellery makers to ensure that every detail is perfect. The outfit has to be completed well before the wedding date to allow time for any necessary adjustments, but it also has to be stored carefully to prevent damage from moisture, insects, or curious family members. The jewellery preparation is equally complex, involving not just the pieces provided in your dowry, but also family heirlooms, borrowed items, and specially commissioned pieces for the wedding day. Each piece of jewellery has to be cleaned, repaired if necessary, and carefully catalogued to ensure that nothing is lost or damaged during the ceremony. Your wedding day jewellery isn't just decoration, it's a display of your family's wealth and a form of insurance for your future financial security. While your clothing is being prepared, your future spouse is undergoing their own preparation process at their family compound. They're being fitted for their wedding robes, learning their ceremonial duties and participating in ritual preparations that mirror your own experiences. It's like parallel wedding planning, where two separate teams are preparing for the same event without being able to coordinate directly. The food preparation for your wedding feast begins weeks in advance, involving not just the cooking, but the careful selection of ingredients, the preparation of special dishes, and the coordination of multiple kitchens to serve what might be hundreds of guests. The menu has to balance symbolic significance with practical considerations like seasonal availability, cost, and the cooking facilities available at your family compound. Your family's cook becomes the equivalent of a modern catering manager, coordinating with local farmers for the freshest ingredients, negotiating with suppliers for bulk quantities, and planning cooking schedules that ensure everything is ready at the right time. The pressure is immense because the quality of the wedding feast reflects directly on your family's hospitality and their respect for the marriage. Special dishes are prepared that symbolise fertility, prosperity, and marital happiness. There are dumplings shaped like gold ingots, noodles that represent long life, fish that symbolise abundance, and sweets that ensure a harmonious marriage. Each dish requires specific preparation techniques and presentation methods that have been passed down through generations of family cooks. The guest list preparation involves its own complex negotiations and social calculations. Your families need to invite everyone who should be invited without offending anyone who might feel slighted by exclusion. The guest list reflects your family's social connections, their obligations to various community members, and their assessment of who should witness your marriage. It's like creating a social map of your entire community, with each invitation carrying implications for future relationships. The invitations themselves are works of art, written on special paper in formal calligraphy that clearly communicates the importance of the event. Each invitation has to be personally delivered by a family member or trusted servant, along with a small gift that acknowledges the recipient's importance to your family. The invitation process can take weeks, involving visits to dozens of households and careful attention to the proper protocols for each social relationship. Your living quarters in your future home are being prepared simultaneously, involving the arrangement of furniture from your dowry, the decoration of your new rooms, and the preparation of spaces for the various post-wedding ceremonies. Your future mother-in-law oversees this process with the kind of detailed attention that ensures your new living space reflects appropriately on the family while making it clear that you're joining their household as a junior member. The final weeks before the wedding involve increasingly frantic activity as all these various preparations converge. Your wedding outfit is completed and fitted one final time. The food preparation moves into high gear with the arrival of fresh ingredients and the beginning of complex cooking processes. The guest confirmations are finalised and the seating arrangements are planned with the diplomatic precision of a peace treaty negotiation. You find yourself in the eye of this preparation storm, simultaneously the centre of attention and strangely peripheral to the actual decision-making. Everyone is working incredibly hard to ensure that your wedding day is perfect, but you're not really consulted about most of the decisions. It's like being the guest of honour at a party planned entirely by other people, where you're expected to be grateful for choices you didn't make about events you didn't plan. The psychological pressure builds steadily as the wedding date approaches. Everyone in your extended family and social circle is invested in the success of your wedding, and their expectations weigh heavily on your shoulders. You're expected to be excited about marrying someone you barely know, grateful for the enormous expense and effort being invested in your wedding, and confident about your ability to fulfill your new role as a married person. The final days before the wedding are a blur of last-minute preparations, final fittings, and ritual purifications, designed to ensure that you're properly prepared for the transformation from single person to married spouse. You undergo ceremonial baths, receive blessings from elderly relatives, and participate in rituals that are supposed to ensure your fertility, happiness, and success in your new household. Congratulations! You've survived months of preparation for a wedding that will last only one day, but will determine the course of your entire future. You've been measured, fitted, blessed, and prepared for a ceremony that's more about social display than personal celebration. Now comes the really fun part, your actual wedding day, which will involve more ritual complexity, social pressure, and emotional intensity than anything you've experienced in your entire life. The wedding day arrives with all the subtle fanfare of a military campaign, complete with precise timing, coordinated movements, and the kind of logistical complexity that would make a modern event planner weep with admiration. You wake up before dawn, not because you're excited about your wedding day, but because the elaborate preparation rituals require hours to complete and must be finished before the astrologically determined auspicious time for the ceremony to begin. It's like the world's most stressful morning routine, except the stakes are your entire future happiness and your family's social reputation. Your female relatives arrive at your bedchamber while the sky is still dark, carrying basins of specially prepared water, ceremonial combs, and the kind of serious expressions that suggest they're about to perform surgery rather than help you get ready for your wedding. The morning preparation ritual begins with a ceremonial bath that involves water that's been blessed by the family's ancestral spirits, scented with flowers that symbolize purity and fertility, and heated to a temperature that's supposed to promote good luck, but mostly just makes you uncomfortable. The bath itself is less about cleanliness and more about spiritual preparation. Your relatives pour the blessed water over you while reciting prayers and blessings that are supposed to ensure your fertility, obedience, and happiness in your new household. The water is cold despite being heated, the flowers stick to your skin in an itchy way, and the entire experience feels more like a religious ritual than a relaxing pre-wedding preparation. You're shivering and uncomfortable, but everyone around you is treating this as a sacred and joyful moment. After the ceremonial bath, you're dressed in layers of undergarments that are so complex they require multiple people to put on correctly. Each layer has symbolic significance and must be arranged in a specific way to ensure proper luck and spiritual protection. The inner layer is white silk for purity, the middle layer is red silk for happiness, and the outer layer is embroidered with symbols for fertility and prosperity. It's like wearing a complicated costume that carries the weight of your family's hopes and expectations. Your wedding robe is then carefully placed over these layers, and you realise that you're essentially wearing a work of art that took months to create and costs more than your family's annual income. The robe is heavy with embroidery, stiff with silk, and so elaborate that you can barely move without assistance. Every thread, every colour, every symbol has been chosen to communicate specific messages about your virtue, your family's status, and your readiness to assume your new role as a married woman. The jewellery application process is equally complex, involving multiple family heirlooms, dowry pieces, and specially commissioned items for the wedding day. Each piece is placed with ceremony and significance, while your relatives offer blessings and advice about your future life. The jewellery is heavy, uncomfortable, and so valuable that you're terrified of damaging it. You're essentially wearing your family's wealth and your future financial security, all while trying to look graceful and happy. Your hair is arranged in an elaborate style that requires the skills of a professional hairdresser and the patience of a saint. The process involves multiple braids, strategic pin placement, and decorative elements that are supposed to make you look like an idealised bride, but mostly make your scalp ache from the weight and tension. Your head feels like it's being held together by determination and hairpins, and you're already getting a headache from the elaborate headdress. The makeup application is the final step in your transformation from regular person to ceremonial bride. The makeup isn't designed to make you look attractive in a modern sense. It's designed to make you look like a proper bride according to ancient aesthetic standards. Your face is painted with white powder that makes you look like a porcelain doll. Your eyebrows are drawn in elaborate shapes that bear no resemblance to your natural eyebrows, and your lips are painted in a small, precise shape that's supposed to suggest delicacy and refinement. By the time your preparation is complete, you barely recognise yourself in the mirror. You look like a figure from a painting, beautiful in a formal and distant way, but not particularly human. The elaborate costume, makeup, and jewellery have transformed you into a symbol of bridal virtue rather than a person about to get married. You're magnificent and terrifying, elegant and uncomfortable, a work of art that happens to be capable of walking. Meanwhile, your future spouse is undergoing their own preparation process at their family compound. They're being dressed in equally elaborate robes, receiving their own blessings and advice, and probably feeling just as nervous and overwhelmed as you are. It's like parallel preparation for the same overwhelming event, except you can't communicate with each other or coordinate your mutual anxiety. The wedding procession begins with your future spouse's family, arriving at your family compound in a parade that's designed to demonstrate their wealth, status, and respect for the marriage. The procession includes musicians, lantern bearers, gift carriers, and enough family members to fill a small village. The noise is tremendous, with drums, gongs, and traditional instruments creating a cacophony that announces to the entire neighbourhood that a wedding is taking place. Your future spouse arrives in a sedan chair that's almost as elaborate as your wedding outfit. The chair is decorated with silk, flowers, and lucky symbols, and it's carried by professional chair bearers who know how to maintain the dignity and stability required for such an important occasion. Your future spouse is also wearing ceremonial robes, elaborate makeup, and probably feeling just as overwhelmed and uncomfortable as you are. The formal presentation of the groom to your family involves elaborate bowing, ceremonial speeches, and the exchange of final gifts that cement the marriage agreement. Your future spouse has to demonstrate their respect for your family through precise ritual behaviour, while your family has to demonstrate their acceptance of the marriage through equally precise responses. It's like a diplomatic ceremony between two small nations, except the treaty being signed is your marriage contract. The moment finally arrives when you're brought out to meet your future spouse in the presence of both families and all the wedding guests. This is the first time you've seen each other since your initial meeting months ago, and you're both so covered in ceremonial costume and makeup that you might not even recognise each other. You bow to each other with the kind of formal precision that suggests you're greeting a foreign dignitary rather than the person you're about to marry. The actual wedding ceremony begins with the ritual presentations to your family's ancestral shrine, where you and your spouse-to-be offer prayers and gifts to ensure that your ancestors approve of the marriage and will bless your future together. You kneel before the shrine holding burning incense, while elderly relatives recite prayers that date back centuries and probably haven't been updated for modern sensibilities. The incense smoke makes your eyes water, but you're not allowed to rub them because it would disturb your makeup. The tea ceremony is perhaps the most emotionally complex part of the entire wedding day, involving the formal serving of tea to your parents and future in-laws as a demonstration of respect, gratitude, and acceptance of your new family relationships. You and your spouse kneel before each set of parents, offering tea in special ceremonial cups while receiving blessings and advice about your future married life. The tea is probably cold by the time you get to drink it, assuming you're allowed to drink it at all. Your parents offer you their final advice as unmarried children, speaking words that are both touching and terrifying about the responsibilities of marriage, the importance of harmony in your new household, and their hopes for your future happiness. Your mother might be crying behind her ceremonial makeup, though it's hard to tell through all the formal smiling and bowing. Your father delivers stern advice about duty, respect, and the importance of maintaining your family's honour in your new household. Your future in-laws offer their own speeches about welcoming you into their family, their expectations for your behaviour as their new daughter or son-in-law, and their hopes that you'll contribute to their household's prosperity and harmony. These speeches are polite but carry the unmistakable weight of expectations and subtle warnings about what will happen if you fail to meet their standards as a family member. The exchange of marriage vows, such as they are, involves reciting formal promises about mutual respect, family harmony, and fulfilling your respective roles as husband and wife. These aren't personal vows that you've written yourselves. They're traditional promises that have been recited by countless couples before you, and will be recited by countless couples after you. The words are beautiful in their ancient formality, but they feel more like legal agreements than expressions of personal commitment. The ceremony reaches its climax with the formal recognition of your marriage by all the assembled guests who witness your transformation from engaged couple to married spouses. This recognition involves more bowing, more formal speeches, and the kind of communal acknowledgement that makes your marriage official in the eyes of your community. You're no longer just two people who've agreed to get married. You're now a married couple with all the social obligations and expectations that entails. The wedding feast begins immediately after the ceremony, and you discover that being the guests of honour at your own wedding feast is more exhausting than enjoyable. You and your new spouse are seated at the head table, where you're expected to remain gracious and attentive, while dozens of guests approach to offer congratulations, gifts, and advice about married life. You're too nervous to eat much, too overwhelmed to properly appreciate the elaborate dishes that your family has spent weeks preparing. The feast continues for hours with multiple courses that represent different aspects of married life and future prosperity. There are dishes for fertility, prosperity, longevity, and harmony, each one requiring appropriate appreciation and ritual consumption. You're supposed to sample every dish while maintaining your ceremonial composure, which is challenging when you're wearing a costume that makes normal movement difficult, and you're so nervous that everything tastes like cardboard. The entertainment during the feast includes traditional music, poetry recitations, and performances that are supposed to celebrate your marriage while providing appropriate cultural education for the younger guests. The musicians play songs about married happiness. The poets recite verses about conjugal harmony. And everyone pretends that arranged marriage is the most romantic thing in the world. It's like a very long, very formal dinner party where you're the entertainment. Throughout the feast, you and your new spouse sit next to each other, making polite conversation, while surrounded by relatives, trying to get to know each other, while performing the role of happy newlyweds for your audience. It's like the world's most public first date, except you're already married and everyone is watching to see if you seem compatible. The pressure to appear happy and harmonious is immense, even though you're both probably terrified and overwhelmed. The gift presentation ceremony involves the formal acknowledgement of every wedding gift, with each gift giver approaching your table to present their offering and receive your thanks. The gifts range from practical household items to valuable jewellery, and each one comes with expectations about future reciprocity and social obligations. You're essentially receiving the material foundation for your new household, while simultaneously acquiring a complex web of social debts. As the day progresses into evening, you begin to realise that your wedding day is almost over, but your marriage is just beginning. The elaborate ceremony, the expensive feast, and the months of preparation have all been leading up to this moment when you and your new spouse will be left alone together for the first time as married people. The thought is simultaneously exciting and terrifying. The conclusion of the wedding feast involves final toasts, blessings, and the gradual departure of guests who have fulfilled their social obligations and are ready to return to their own homes. The clean-up begins around you as servants clear away the remains of the feast and begin the process of returning your family compound to normal. The wedding is ending, but the marriage is just beginning. Your new spouse's family prepares to depart, and you realise that you're expected to go with them. This is the moment when you leave your childhood home forever and begin your new life as a member of a different household. The goodbye to your parents is emotional despite the formal constraints, and you're acutely aware that you're crossing a threshold that can never be uncrossed. The journey to your new home is made in the same elaborate sedan chair that brought your spouse to your family compound, except now you're travelling together toward your shared future. The chair is cramped, uncomfortable, and swaying, but it's also the first private space you've shared with your new spouse. You might make awkward conversation about the wedding, or you might sit in nervous silence, both of you processing the enormity of what has just happened. Congratulations! You've survived your ancient Chinese wedding day, complete with elaborate costumes, complex rituals, and enough social pressure to crush a modern person's soul. You're now officially married to someone you've known for a total of perhaps 6 hours of formal conversation, and you're about to begin your new life together in a household where you're the newest and most junior member. The real adventure is just beginning. Now comes the moment that everyone has been carefully not talking about directly, but has been implying throughout the entire marriage process. Your wedding night. After months of preparation, elaborate ceremonies, and formal social interactions, you and your new spouse are finally alone together for the first time as married people. The transition from public ceremony to private intimacy is jarring, like stepping from a brightly lit stage into a dark, unfamiliar room where you're expected to perform a completely different kind of role. Your new living quarters have been prepared with the kind of attention to symbolic detail that characterises everything else about ancient Chinese weddings. The bed has been scattered with red dates, peanuts, longan, and lotus seeds, a combination that spells out wishes for early pregnancy in a linguistic pun that your mother-in-law probably found much more amusing than you do. The room smells of sandalwood incense and the lingering aroma of the herbal baths you both took as part of your wedding day preparations. The bedroom itself is decorated with red silk hangings, auspicious symbols embroidered on every surface, and enough lucky charms to stock a small temple. Every element has been chosen to promote fertility, marital harmony, and prosperity, creating an atmosphere that's simultaneously romantic and intimidating. It's like a shrine to married life, except you're expected to live in it and somehow transform from strangers into intimate partners. You and your new spouse stand in this carefully prepared space, still wearing your elaborate wedding costumes, still painted with ceremonial makeup, and still essentially strangers who happen to be legally married. The contrast between the intimate setting and your mutual unfamiliarity is overwhelming. You've spent the entire day performing the role of happy newlyweds for your families and guests, and now you're expected to somehow become actual newlyweds without any transition period or preparation. The process of removing your wedding costumes becomes a complex negotiation between modesty, practicality, and the sudden realization that you're about to be physically intimate with someone you barely know. Your elaborate wedding robe requires assistance to remove properly, but asking your new spouse for help feels impossibly forward. The jewellery needs to be carefully removed and stored, but you're not sure if you should do this privately or if it's something you should share as a married couple. Your wedding makeup, which took hours to apply and has been gradually deteriorating throughout the long day, needs to be removed before it stains the ceremonial bedding. But the process of washing your face reveals your actual appearance to your spouse for the first time, adding another layer of vulnerability to an already overwhelming situation. You're essentially meeting each other again, this time as your actual selves rather than as elaborately costumed performers. The conversation, if there is any, is stilted and awkward as you both try to navigate the transition from formal wedding ceremony participants to intimate partners. You might discuss the events of the day, comment on the success of the ceremony, or exchange polite observations about your new living quarters. But underneath these safe topics is the awareness that you're expected to consummate your marriage, transforming your legal union into a physical reality. The pressure to perform maritally is immense, complicated by the fact that neither of you has had any real preparation for physical intimacy beyond whatever whispered advice you might have received from married relatives. The expectations are clear, but the practical knowledge is limited, creating a situation where you're supposed to successfully navigate one of life's most intimate experiences with someone you don't really know, using skills you've never practiced. The physical space of the bedroom feels simultaneously too large and too small. Too large because the silence between you seems to echo in the decorated emptiness. Too small because there's nowhere to retreat from the intimacy that everyone expects you to embrace. The elaborate bed, with its symbolic decorations and expensive bedding, feels more like an altar than a comfortable place to sleep, and you're acutely aware that your performance tonight will be evaluated tomorrow by relatives who will be watching for signs of successful consummation. Your new spouse is dealing with their own version of the same anxiety, probably feeling just as overwhelmed by the transition from public ceremony to private intimacy. They're also wearing elaborate costumes that need to be removed, also painted with makeup that needs to be washed off, and also trying to figure out how to transform from a ceremonial participant into an intimate partner. The mutual awkwardness might be comforting if either of you are confident enough to acknowledge it. The sleeping arrangements themselves require negotiation, since you're sharing a bed for the first time with someone whose sleep habits, personal preferences, and physical comfort requirements are completely unknown to you. Do they prefer the left side or the right side? Do they sleep hot or cold? Do they snore, talk in their sleep, or thrash around during the night? These practical questions feel simultaneously trivial and monumentally important when you're trying to establish a shared, intimate space. The morning after your wedding night arrives with its own set of challenges and expectations. Your new mother-in-law and other female relatives will be looking for subtle signs that your marriage has been properly consummated, because your fertility and the continuation of the family line depend on the successful physical union of your marriage. The bedding might be examined, your behaviour will be analysed, and your appearance will be scrutinised for evidence of your new status as a sexually active, married woman. The psychological adjustment to married life begins immediately, as you wake up in an unfamiliar room, in an unfamiliar bed, next to an unfamiliar person who is now your permanent life partner. The reality of married life starts to sink in as you realise that this arrangement isn't temporary or experimental. This is your new permanent reality, and you'll be expected to build a successful partnership with this person you barely know. Your new daily routine begins immediately, as you're expected to assume your role as a member of your spouse's household, with all the responsibilities and obligations that entails. There's no honeymoon period, no gradual adjustment phase, no time to slowly get to know each other before taking on the full responsibilities of married life. You're expected to seamlessly integrate into an established household structure while simultaneously building an intimate relationship with your new spouse. The breakfast on your first morning as a married couple is a family affair, where your behaviour with your new spouse will be observed and evaluated by your in-laws. You need to demonstrate appropriate affection without being improper. Show respect for your new family while maintaining your own dignity, and somehow appear happy and settled, despite the fact that you're still figuring out basic things, like your spouse's preferred way of drinking tea. Congratulations! You've survived your wedding night and woken up as a married person in a world where there's no such thing as dating, no gradual relationship building, and no practice runs before committing to lifelong partnership. You've successfully transitioned from single person to married spouse overnight, literally, and now you get to spend the rest of your life figuring out how to make this arrangement work with someone you chose through a process that prioritised family harmony over personal compatibility. So you've survived the wedding ceremony, navigated the awkwardness of your wedding night, and woken up to discover that you're now permanently married to someone who is essentially a stranger 24 hours ago. Welcome to married life in ancient China, where the romantic comedies end at "I do," and the real adventure begins with learning how to share your daily existence with someone whose personal habits, preferences, and quirks are completely unknown to you. Your first challenge is figuring out the practical logistics of sharing living space with your new spouse, while simultaneously learning to navigate your position in their family household. If you're the bride, you've moved into your husband's family compound, where you're now the most junior adult member of an established hierarchy. Every interaction requires careful attention to proper behaviour, respectful communication, and the delicate balance between asserting your place in the family while acknowledging your subordinate status. Your new mother-in-law becomes one of the most important relationships in your life, and it's a relationship that was determined by your marriage rather than chosen through mutual compatibility. She's responsible for teaching you the household routines, family traditions, and behavioural expectations that will govern your daily life. She's also the person who will evaluate your performance as a daughter-in-law, and whose approval or disapproval will significantly affect your happiness and status within the household. The daily routine in your new household is complex and carefully structured, with specific roles and responsibilities for each family member. You need to learn not just what your duties are, but when they should be performed, how they should be performed, and how they fit into the overall rhythm of family life. It's like learning a complicated dance where everyone else already knows the steps, and your missteps affect the entire performance. Your relationship with your new spouse develops gradually through shared daily experiences rather than through romantic courtship. You learn their preferences by observing their reactions to different foods, their personality through their interactions with family members, and their character through their approach to daily responsibilities. It's like getting to know someone in reverse, starting with marriage and working backward toward friendship and affection. The pressure to produce children begins immediately, adding another layer of complexity to your adjustment to married life. Your fertility becomes a matter of family concern, with relatives offering advice about diet, behaviour and timing that's supposed to promote pregnancy. Every month that passes without pregnancy becomes a source of anxiety, with whispered discussions about whether there might be a problem that requires intervention from doctors or fortune tellers. Your daily schedule revolves around household duties that are both practical and symbolic. If you're the wife, you might be responsible for certain cooking duties, textile work, household management, and care of younger family members. These aren't just chores, they're demonstrations of your value as a family member and your preparation for managing your own household in the future. Every task is performed under observation and evaluation. The social life of a newly married couple involves carefully navigated visits to relatives, participation in community events, and the gradual establishment of your position as a married couple within your social circle. These social interactions require coordination between you and your spouse as you learn to present yourselves as a unified couple while still figuring out your private relationship. It's like public performance art, where the audience includes everyone you know. Your financial life becomes merged with your spouse's family finances, and you need to learn the household's economic rhythms, spending priorities, and long-term financial goals. If you brought a substantial dowry, there might be discussions about how those resources should be used to benefit the family. If your spouse's family is prosperous, you need to learn their standards for appropriate spending and resource management. The seasonal rhythms of family life become your rhythms, with specific duties and celebrations that mark the passage of time. You participate in ancestral worship ceremonies, seasonal festivals, and family celebrations while learning the traditional roles and responsibilities that come with each event. Your calendar becomes filled with obligations that were chosen by tradition rather than personal preference. Your relationship with your birth family changes significantly after marriage, as your primary loyalty and residence shift to your spouse's family. Visits to your parents become formal occasions rather than casual family time, and your ability to help your birth family during difficulties becomes limited by your obligations to your married family. It's like changing citizenship to a country where you're still learning the language and customs. The development of genuine affection and intimacy with your spouse happens gradually through shared experiences, mutual support during difficulties, and the slow building of trust and understanding. Some couples are fortunate enough to develop deep love and partnership. Others maintain respectful cooperation without passionate attachment. The expectation is compatibility and harmony rather than romantic love. Though romantic love sometimes develops as a fortunate bonus, your personal growth and development become intertwined with your success in your married role. Your education continues through learning household management, family traditions, and the social skills required for your position, but it's education directed toward making you a better wife, mother, and family member rather than pursuing independent interests or ambitions. The conflicts that arise in married life require resolution through family mediation rather than private negotiation between spouses. If you and your spouse disagree about something important, the elder family members become involved in finding solutions that maintain family harmony while addressing the underlying issues. Your marital problems become family problems, solved through family solutions. Your future becomes inseparable from your spouse's future and your married family's fortunes. Your security, social status, and opportunities for happiness depend on the success of the family unit and your ability to contribute positively to that success. There's no independent backup plan, no possibility of starting over, and no option to change your mind about the fundamental structure of your life. The seasonal changes bring different challenges and opportunities for married life. Summer heat makes the shared sleeping arrangements uncomfortable. Winter cold requires cooperation to maintain warmth, and the agricultural seasons determine the rhythm of work and rest that governs family life. You learn to adapt your personal preferences to the practical realities of shared existence. Your personal possessions become merged with family possessions, and you need to learn the household systems for storing, maintaining, and using the various items that support daily life. Your dowry items might be integrated into the general household resources, or they might be maintained as your personal property, depending on family customs and the terms of your marriage agreement. The communication patterns between you and your spouse develop slowly as you learn their preferred ways of discussing problems, expressing affection, and making decisions about your shared life. Some couples develop easy, comfortable communication. Others maintain formal politeness throughout their marriage. The expectation is respectful interaction rather than intimate emotional sharing, though intimate sharing sometimes develops over time. Congratulations! You've successfully transitioned from the elaborate spectacle of your wedding day to the daily reality of married life, where success is measured not by romantic passion, but by your ability to build a functional partnership with someone you're still getting to know. You've learnt that marriage in ancient China is less about finding your soulmate and more about successfully merging your life with someone else's family system while gradually building whatever personal relationship is possible within those constraints. And so we reach the end of our journey through the intricate world of ancient Chinese weddings, where romance took a backseat to family negotiations, love was optional, but duty was mandatory, and your entire future could be determined by the quality of your needlework and your family's social connections. As you drift off to sleep tonight, perhaps you can appreciate the simple luxury of choosing your own partner, planning your own wedding, and building relationships based on mutual attraction rather than astrological compatibility and economic calculations. The elaborate rituals we've explored tonight, from the careful matchmaking negotiations to the complex dowry arrangements, from the months of preparation to the overwhelming ceremony itself, remind us that marriage has always been one of humanity's most important social institutions, even when that institution looked radically different from our modern expectations. These ancient Chinese couples, bound together by family decisions and social obligations, often found ways to build genuine partnerships and deep affection within the constraints of their arranged marriages. Think about the resilience required to build a life with someone chosen by others, the emotional intelligence needed to find harmony within predetermined roles, and the courage required to trust that affection and compatibility could grow from shared experience and mutual respect. These marriages, born from practical considerations rather than romantic passion, often lasted entire lifetimes and produced families that endured for generations. The complexity of these ancient wedding traditions also reminds us how much human effort has always gone into creating meaningful ceremonies that mark life's major transitions. The months of preparation, the elaborate costumes, the symbolic foods, and the complex rituals all serve to transform two individual people into a married couple with the support and recognition of their entire community. The wedding wasn't just about the bride and groom, it was about weaving them into the social fabric of their society. As you settle into sleep, imagine the countless couples throughout Chinese history who followed these traditions, who built successful marriages within these constraints, and who found happiness and fulfillment in partnership that began as economic arrangement. Their stories remind us that human adaptability, resilience, and capacity for love can flourish under almost any circumstances, even when those circumstances seem impossibly formal and restrictive by modern standards. The ancient Chinese understanding that marriage was fundamentally about family alliance and social stability rather than individual happiness might seem cold to modern sensibilities, but it also provided a framework for lifelong partnership that didn't depend on maintaining romantic passion or personal compatibility. These marriages were built to endure through practical cooperation, mutual respect, and shared commitment to family welfare, rather than through the more fragile foundation of romantic love. Tonight, as you drift off to sleep, you can rest peacefully knowing that you live in an era where you can choose your own partner, plan your own wedding, and build your relationship according to your own values and preferences. You don't need to worry about matchmakers calculating your astrological compatibility, parents negotiating your dowry, or in-laws evaluating your performance as a spouse. Your marriage, if you choose to marry, can be built on the radical foundation of mutual choice, personal affection, and shared dreams rather than family obligations and social necessity. Sweet dreams, and may your rest be filled with the gentle rhythms of history rather than the anxiety of ancient matrimonial negotiations. Tomorrow you'll wake up in a world where love marriages are the norm, where personal happiness is considered important, and where wedding planning is stressful, mainly because you have too many choices rather than too few. Until next time, sleep well, and remember that the most boring history is often the most fascinating when examined closely enough. The soft sounds of ancient China fade into the background, the rustle of silk wedding robes, the gentle chiming of ceremonial bells, the whispered blessings of family elders, as you settle into the comfort of your modern bed, grateful for the freedom to choose your own romantic destiny, while appreciating the dedication and resilience of those who found love and happiness within very different constraints. Rest well, knowing that human nature's capacity for adaptation, affection, and partnership has remained constant throughout history, even as the customs and expectations surrounding marriage have changed dramatically over the centuries.